So the game Fortnite has become really popular lately, and it's a third-person shooter game where you're in a big map with 100 other people and the last person standing wins. I've been playing it a lot, it's really fun, and one important aspect of this game is to set up your key bindings correctly. There's a lot of commands for building structures and changing weapons, and if you have those set to keys that are comfortable for you, you can play much more efficiently and you can, quickly switch to building or quickly switch to a certain weapon, and it's going to give you an advantage. So I spent a lot of time on the key binding screen within the game trying to set up keys that work well for me. And I found that this screen has some pretty major UI problems because I kept rebinding left click. And left click is for fire. I always want left click to be fire, but the UI makes it easy to accidentally, let's say you go and you want to rebind move forward, which is typically W. And if you click, okay, rebind W, it pops up a screen that says, okay, what do you want to use for move forward? And then if I go, oh, I don't actually want to do this, or I just kind of get confused for a moment and I click, it says, oh, okay, you want to use left click as your forward. So not only do you accidentally set click to move forward, but you also unbind click for fire. So even if you fix move forward and set it back to W, you now have to realize that you've unbound fire and go back and set it to left click. And I did this several times. And I even saw other people on a Twitch stream make the same mistake. And I've heard of several people who've done this, so I think it really needs some improvement. So I set out to use Flinto to recreate the UI and fix some of these problems to make it harder to accidentally unbind fire or other important commands, and more obvious if you're about to rebind something that's already bound, because you may be unbinding something and you don't know where in the long list of keys it even is, and so you could totally miss it. So let's check it out. So here's what I've come up with. I've redrawn the UI of this key binding screen, and I just kept it simple. I didn't include every key, I didn't include the scrolling, because I can still get my point across pretty easily without that. So I'm going to zoom in here on this screen, which is the main key binding screen. And you can see I've got different commands and then the key that is bound to them. So in this case, move forward is set to W. Now I put a behavior on each of these buttons here, and I'm going to open this in the preview so I can show you that behavior. It's just a simple hover effect. There's a lot of tutorials on our channel that show how to do this kind of thing. That's just for a little bit of realism. The important thing here is the UI concepts that I've changed to avoid accidentally rebinding keys. So if you were to click down on W to change it, you'll go to this screen, Set Binding. And you can see the change I've made here is that it says move forward. So it actually tells you what you're rebinding. And then it says press any key. So you can set a new key. And if you decide that you don't want to do this, you can click cancel. So it's very clear how you cancel out of this. Whereas in the current UI, if you just think, oh, I don't want to do this, and you click with your mouse, you've accidentally rebound fire to, and you would have set move forward to left click. So I think this is a lot better. Let's go on this home screen, and I'll draw a link. I'm just going to put it over this entire row and target this screen here, the set binding. And I'll just use a fade in transition. Now to go back, I'm going to select this cancel button and I'll press B, which will take me back. So what I want to do is simulate if I do that accidental left click. So I think I've already made it more obvious, less likely that you're going to make that mistake. But let's say you do and you click left click. I'm going to make a big link so that when you click anywhere in there, it goes to this screen that I created, which says rebind existing key. So this is a proposal that I have to add a pop-up that says left click is already bound to fire. Are you sure you want to rebind it? So the idea here is if you're rebinding any existing key, then it'll warn you about it. And it tells you what it's bound to. And this would be useful, I think, for any of the keys because sometimes, let's say you have C for crouch and you decide that you want to use C for reload. It will tell you, hey, C is already set to crouch, so are you sure you want to change that? I think that would be very helpful. And so here, if you say no cancel, it will go back. And so I'll just use a backlink. And if you say yes bind, it will then go to this screen, which is just the key binding screen, but it has move forward set to left click. So it's like you've made the change and fire is now unbound on this screen. And let me just make sure that I have the fade in transition used there. All right, so once you're on this screen, if you click on apply, so like you're all finished, it's going to go to this screen, which is another new concept that I'm proposing here. So you're clicking apply when you're all finished, and it's saying, hey, you're all done, but you don't have a binding for fire. Are you sure you want to exit? Because it's almost always a mistake if you don't have any binding for fire, because you need that to play the game. It's a pretty critical one, and it's prone to accidental rebinding. So maybe you could just, if you were the developer of this game, you could come up with a list of the really critical key bindings and warn if you're leaving the screen without that bound. Because I've actually unbound fire, went into a game, and I couldn't shoot, and so that wasn't fun. So you could say don't exit, that would just take you back. And if you say exit, then you can go on and play the game. So I don't actually have a screen, where you would go when you press exit. I'll just actually link that back to my home screen so I can start over in this prototype. Okay, so now I've got all those links created. Let me just select them all here so we can see. And I'll open up the preview and go through this. By going through the preview, we can kind of pretend that we're actually using it and kind of imagine how this would work. So if I come in here and I say, okay, I want to change move forward, I click on that, and it tells me that I'm rebinding move forward, so it's very clear, and it says press any key. And then I can click cancel. If I decide I don't want to do this, I have an easy way out, so I'll click cancel. Now let's try it again, and this time I'm going to click in this black area here. So I'm going to rebind my left click to move forward. So I click, and it says, hey, you're rebinding an existing key. Left click is already bound to fire. Are you sure you want to do it? So I can say cancel, and I come back here. So let me do it again, and this time I'll say yes, bind it. And now I come back to my key binding screen, but this time move forward is set to left click, and fire is not bound. And so that's probably a mistake, but someone could set it up that way if they wanted. And then when they go to click apply, it says, hey, you're missing an important keybind. You don't have a binding for fire, so are you sure that you want to exit? So I could say, oh, don't exit, I'm going to fix that. Or if you really want to for some reason, you can then exit. So that's my proposal for fixing Fortnite's key binding screen. I hope you agree that this is an improvement, and I hope that you can see how Flinto can be really useful for something like this, where you have an idea about how to improve a UI, and by putting it into Flinto and actually making it interactive, you can kind of validate that it's a good idea, and you could share it with other people. Just making mock-ups of this proposal wouldn't really be enough, because if I went through clicking through here, I might say, this alert seems like a little bit too much. Maybe I should take out one of those alerts. But you don't really get that feeling of being interrupted by an alert unless you're actually clicking through the flow. So putting it into Flinto is a really fast way to try it out in a realistic way that can really put you in the shoes of a user that might actually go through this process.